up for Central Florida Salute YouTube. I'm your host, and I have the pleasure of having an Air Force veteran career, Crystal Martin, on the show today. And I just met you about 5 minutes ago,
yes.
And I'm interested in hearing your story. Let's start with where were you born, and
Sure.
and why did you get in the Air Force?
Sure. Well, I was born in Saginaw, Michigan, and could not tell you what it looked like because my parents moved from there when I was 2 months old to San Diego, California. And that's where I grew up. But I grew up with, there were 7 children in my family, 6 brothers and sisters. So
Wow.
there was no opportunity for me for college money, and I knew that I wanted to go. So I was walking downtown San Diego one day and I saw a poster and it said, "We'll pay for your college." And I thought,
That sounds
okay,
good.
I can do that. So I went in, had no idea what it was, but found out and I said, I can do this. So I planned on going in for 4 years and I ended up staying 20.
Yeah, wow. So, how old were you when you went in? It was like 18 or?
I was 20 when I went in because I attempted on my own to go to college, but when I kind of was getting those first couple of bills, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to work out.
Yeah.
So I just, divine intervention, saw that poster one day.
So you enlisted and Lackland? No? Or where did you go
I went
basic?
to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was an experience, right?
That was an experience, but when you grow up with 6 brothers and sisters and you have a mom who can keep all of you in line,
No problem.
it was just like getting up in the morning from my house.
Your brothers and sisters, any of them serve?
They did. My older brother served. He now works for SpaceX. My sister, below me, also served in the Air Force. I was the only one that went to full retirement, but I did have a couple more siblings that were in.
They all went Air Force?
They all went Air Force.
Wow.
Yeah. Must have been the only poster downtown.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Well, so you went in, and now you're in basic, and you pick a career that you, or where did you go? And
Sure. Unfortunately, during my time, you really couldn't pick a career. So, and you know, you're young, you don't necessarily understand how it works. I didn't have any mentors at the time. So again, somebody's looking out for me because I got a great career. And they put me in a field called aerospace medicine. Some people know it as flight medicine or the flight surgeon's office. And so what that is it's a regular clinic, except there's specialties in that our patients are pilots. Because pilots have to be seen a little bit differently, because maybe something as insignificant as an aspirin may affect them at altitude or when they're in some of these high-G aircraft. And of course, it's very important to know the status of their health as well, because something might be a danger to flying.
not only to flying, but to the rest of the world. I mean, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So
I didn't
interesting
realize
field.
they had a thing just for pilots and stuff like that.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And when I got to my first base, Edwards Air Force Base, the very first pilot I met was a man named Chuck Yeager.
Chuck Yeager, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, absolutely. He was a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base. I was very young. I didn't really know who he was, but I did learn later. So that was kind of exciting for me.
Yeah, yeah. I would think it would be. Did you get his autograph? Get your picture taken with him?
He gave it to me. He gave me a picture of him and the glamorous Glennis.
Oh.
And you know,
And you didn't
keep
bring
a
it here to
lot.
show it to
I
us?
should have. I should have brought it to you.
Well, I tell you what, that lady over there that's filming this, you get an email number and she'll send it to her,
Sure, I
and we'll
would
put it in
be
the show.
Happy to. I would
You
be
and
happy
Chuck
to.
Yeager.
It's interesting the people you meet in the military, to be honest.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. May I share a story with you about when I retired?
Yeah, just remember you're sharing it with the world.
I'm sharing it with the world. when I retired, usually they give you a retirement party. And I thought about what message. Somebody said, what do you talk about? And they said, give people a message. Leave people with a message that you learned during your career. So I thought about it. And what I did is I had a lot of young airmen out there. And I told them that when I came in, when I got to my first base, they said, you're so lucky you're going to do a physical on this person. And I said, really? They said, yes, he's famous. And that's when he came walking in. It was Chuck Yeager. And again, I'm 19 years old. I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah,
I was expecting Brad Pitt.
Yeah, who's Chuck Yeager? Never heard of him.
And then, when you're junior in rank, it's wonderful because they tend to push you to the front of things. And I was asked by my first sergeant to go to a luncheon. And I thought, oh, free lunch, okay. So I went, and again, they said, you're lucky you're going, all these famous people. And the people came in, and one of them sat next to me, at the tables. They kind of sat amongst us. Again, I had no clue, and I was thinking about, well, we're going out tonight. And so a few months go by, and they tell me again, we're going to send you to a luncheon. And I'm like, oh boy, let me guess, they're famous. And I got there and listened, and I'm like, okay, and I went home. But what happened was, the first one was Chuck Yeager. The second luncheon, I was sitting next to a Tuskegee Airman.
Oh.
The third luncheon I went to was a man called Colin Powell. So my message to people was to be in the moment. Because had I been smart enough back then, I would have realized the amazing people that were next to me. And the people that I encountered, I had no earthly clue. So I left people with that one, because if I wish I could go back now and do it all over again, but you got to admit, those were some famous people.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I've met a lot of them myself.
Yeah.
I've been doing this now for 14 years. If you go on my YouTube, that's your homework assignment.
Okay.
I have a Tuskegee Airman there. I have frogmen. I have Navy SEALs. I have pilots that were Blue Angels. I've flown in B-17s, B-29s, and I have met some of the most amazing people. I even met Gary Sinise.
Never take it for granted.
No. It's I tell you, I could write a book if I could write a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you don't think about that at the time, especially when you're at that age. You're like, okay, who? Yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's silly. They have that term young and dumb, and I see why they invented it. But yeah, that was my message, though, is...
Well, tell me more about your career. You said that you were observing the pilots to make sure they didn't have the wrong medication or whatever. So where did you go in 20 years, some of your experiences that could you share with us?
Sure. Again, like I said, I was incredibly blessed from the day I saw that poster. And be careful what you wish for, because I said, I want to travel. And that's exactly what I did. So I got an amazing career, and because of it, we got to be the squadron medical element. So wherever these squadrons went, we went. So if the B-52s went somewhere, like when I was at Barksdale, we deployed with them. But in the beginning at Edwards Air Force Base, one of the big things, there was an opportunity for me to have a temporary position. And everybody kept saying, no, they're not going to give it to you. You're too young. You're too green. And I said, you know what? What do I have to lose? I'm going to interview
go for it. Right,
yeah. And I got on the Space Shuttle Recovery Team at Edwards Air Force Base. So I was so excited to be part of that.
Yeah.
And then I was a couple of highlights in my career. There was a lot of humanitarian missions. Provide comfort, provide relief. But one of the big ones that stand out was going to Somalia You've probably seen the movie Black Hawk Down.
Yes, I did.
Yes, and I happened to be there for that. And so that probably was one of the biggest highlights of my career, being part of that. That was when I was still young, trying to understand, well, what's a humanitarian mission? Why can't we engage the enemy? They're attacking our people. You know, I also got a big political education out of that deployment. So I was fortunate enough to live in Germany. My daughter was born there. And then you know, as you get older, it gets a little harder on your joints. I started putting in for a little bit different assignments.
Wait a minute. You're telling me about getting older and it's difficult on your joints?
You have to
You're 22,
remember,
you said, right?
the average age is what, like 18 to 20? And about this time, I was kind of getting to be in my late 30s, almost 40. So I put in for a job at the United States Air Force Academy, which was an interesting job, and I really enjoyed it. I was exposed to a lot of the cadets, and it just made me feel better about the world going forward, because there's some pretty sharp cadets that we have there at the Air Force Academy. And you know, they would come to sick call, and boy, they'd still be there studying their quantum physics in between coughing, but just some really sharp kids. So that's probably some of the highlights.
Yeah, I would think so. So how many countries did you go to?
My goodness. I probably went everywhere but the Asia area, because I've deployed to anywhere from Alaska to Guam. There was an interesting place. Took you an hour to get from one side to the other. And I've been pretty much all over Europe. I've been to Afghanistan, Turkey, Iraq. Turkey, that was an interesting one, in Sirlik. And little places. You know, sometimes when you were given these orders, you'd have to spin the globe and figure out, where are they sending me to?
Yeah.
Some missions will tell you what you're going to do when you get there. And I thought, well, how hard can it be? I'm medical. So.
Well, on medical, is it psychological medical, or is it with wounds, or you know? I mean,
Sure.
Exactly what you say medical. What did you exactly do?
Well, anything from basic clinical work. So when we weren't deployed somewhere, we worked in hospitals as if we were civilians. If you were to get sick, you come to the clinic, you see the doctor, we take your temperature, we give you your medications. So the basic medical stuff like that. But when we were deployed, we would put these amazing trauma centers up. They could have these level 2 trauma centers set up in the middle of the desert and be operating on people within a day. To missions, for example, we were in Turkey, and when the planes coming from Afghanistan were landing with people that were going to Guantanamo, we would go on the planes, check each person that they were bringing to Guantanamo, make sure they didn't have any medical needs, get off the plane, and go to sleep until the next plane came in.
You had an interesting life.
I think I did. I think I did. There were some days
I just wish you're going to have to email some photos here.
I will email some photos.
Because we're talking about all these great places you've been, but I can't see it.
I'll email them.
Okay.
I will email them.
Okay. So you did 20 years?
20 years. I fell in love, or I would have done 22. But I
So you
met
got
the man of
married
my
when you were
dreams.
in the Air Force?
I did. He fell in love with my combat boots, and I met him, and then
He fell in love with your combat boots?
He fell in love with my combat boots. He used to love watching me sit over there and lace them, and so silliest thing, but yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
I heard of smiles, but I never heard of combat boots. But that's okay.
That's okay.
Whatever works, right?
That's okay.
So you got was he in the service too?
He was not in the service.
Okay.
He was a business owner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I got a great mother-in-law out of it.
I know. I've heard all about her, and you know what? She is going to be on Central Florida Salute YouTube after you.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to have another interview, and I understand she's had quite the career too.
She has had quite.
But we
the
can't
career.
talk about her because she's got to talk about her.
Yep, we'll let her talk about herself. But I'm excited for your listeners to hear her story.
Yeah. So what are you doing now?
Now, when I left the military, right before I got out, I utilized that college degree I initially went in for and got my nursing degree. And then I just worked in clinics. And I thought, well, this is nice. You know, we've been involved with going to war for 10 years. And things kind of calmed down, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because it was almost natural for me to slide into that mode of doing that kind of work and those kind of hours. So I think my military served me well.
Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure
Absolutely.
it did. You know, I've been talking to whoever will listen to me, especially down here, because you know we don't really have. On Veterans Day, we don't have a Veterans Day parade. We don't see the parades. I don't know about in out in California where you were, but where I'm from up north in New England, we had big parades, you know, on Veterans Day. And so I've mentioned to people down here, whoever will listen, I says, you don't really have parades for veterans. You have one for Mardi Gras, you have Christmas, you have whatever. You know, as a football team wins, whatever. But why don't you do one for our veterans? But then again, why don't you make it a heroes parade?
Sure.
For all those doctors and nurses, first responders, firemen, especially after COVID. You know, the COVID, everybody went through so much. Our nurses and doctors, they're heroes too.
Absolutely.
So why don't we do a heroes parade?
I love that.
I do too, but nobody's listening to me.
Well, maybe that's something you and I should do.
That's right. Let's get it going.
Yeah, two
and you
heads are
too
better
out
than
there,
one.
you help us out. You know, let's get a parade going, a Heroes Day parade. You know, I mean, up there we have like the high school, they march in the parade, you know, the bands. Why not?
I bet they'd love to perform with us.
Yeah. So, anyway, what was your most memorable thing, other than your wedding, of course? I mean, military, and your child, of course. Your military deployment or whatever.
If you can believe it, as rough as Somalia was, part of the job was flying people between Mogadishu and Mombasa, Kenya. When we were in Mombasa, Kenya, we got a little bit of time off. And so in the middle of all this chaos going on there, on the down days, we got to do things like safaris. And so there were some days that I was there that I said, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. In between that were the days that, why am I getting paid to do this?
Yeah.
But
when you say safari, you go out and looking at lions and all that stuff?
Exactly. People pay tens of thousands of dollars to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And so the best part of my career was being able to be in these places that I don't think I would have ever had the opportunity to be in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah.
So one day you're on a safari, the next day you're in Garmisch in Germany, the next day you're in Guam. So even though the job was tough at times and the mission was tough at times, there's no, complaining when it comes to a plane breaking down in Hawaii for a couple of days on the way to Iraq. So you try to focus on the good stuff, and that was the good stuff for me.
Yeah, you've gotten to see quite a bit of the world. I saw primarily Southeast Asia. That was it.
Sure.
I spent most of my time in Thailand with the B-52s, but I love traveling, and I'm kind of envious that you got to all those places. I'm sure some of them weren't picnics, but
Right.
to go on a safari, and I just came back from Europe. My brother and I went over there, did a World War II tour.
Nice.
And, you know, it's a whole different world when you get out of the States, you know?
It is. It really is. And sometimes I wish that a lot of the younger people in this country could see some of these places. I think that would give them a little bit better appreciation for the country that we live in. And I
agree.
used to always, when I had to deploy, I would always send my daughter boxes with things and pictures and stories of the local children, and how, you know, you might want a PlayStation really bad. They just want to make 25 cents to take home so the family can eat.
Yeah.
So I raised my daughter kind of understanding that the world is not, I need a cell phone, I need a PlayStation, things like that. So that would be interesting if a lot of them could see places
I give
like
you
this.
credit, my friend. I give you credit.
Yeah.
You know, I've said all along, I think in this country, we should all be required to do 2 years service.
Sure.
If you can't do the military, do the Peace Corps, do something. So
Serve.
then you appreciate, like you've learned, and I learned when I was overseas, you get to appreciate what you have. You know, I'll never forget the first time they told me they had to take all this junk down to the dump, you know, all this plywood and everything, and I got in the truck with another fella who was driving, and I just came into the country. Go through the dump, people come out of the nowhere, just climbed on the truck to take whatever was on there, you know. And there's one kid, I'll never forget this kid. He jumped on the plane, jumped on the truck, you know, by the, what do you call it, where you step in,
Yes.
the running board.
The running board.
And his face was like all deformed and everything. It was like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm just a kid at 18, 19 years old. I'm like, wow, this is, never seen anything like this, you know. But you're right, you grow as a person,
Absolutely.
you know. And but I'm jealous of you. You got around.
I did, and like I said, from the very beginning, from the day I saw that poster, I think, you know, the world or karma or the big guy above was looking out for me, because every time I went to get out, I got an offer I couldn't refuse, and next thing I know, I'm like, I just hit 20 years. And having said that, thank goodness I hit 20 years, because when you're young, retirement is the last thing on your mind.
Yeah, you don't think about
Yes, we all know now, but back then it was, my paycheck was coming Friday, how fast can I spend it? And I look back now and think, thank goodness I did that, you know, because now I see the benefits of having, you know, done a whole career.
it. You know, I have a saying that I tell young people. He who fails to plan for retirement can plan to fail in retirement.
Absolutely.
And you think about that, you know. You know, I mean, like you say, when you're 19, 20 years old, you don't think about that. But if you do think about that and say, hey, I'm setting a goal for myself, 55, 60, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know. Well, I understand, I've gotten a signal that there's a very important airman
Yes.
coming on next. So we have to say goodbye, because this is, she's like your officer, right? She's like your commanding officer?
She is. She absolutely is.
United States Air Force, too.
She is, yes. She's got an important position in my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say goodbye.
Let's say goodbye.
We look at them over there, and you ready?
Ready.
To all our veterans out there, active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time, thank you.